Okay, so how does AI actually understand us? It's pretty much the question that's been on everyone's mind lately, right? We type a prompt into a chat window, and literally seconds later, we get this perfectly coherent, highly detailed response that sounds, well, remarkably human. But what is actually going on under the hood? How do these massive models process human language so effectively? Well, consider this explainer your ultimate study guide. Today, we're going to completely demystify large language models, peeling back the layers to see exactly how they work. Welcome to Anatomy of an AI, from tokens to transformers. Today, we're looking at the exact mechanics of these systems, taking the mystery right out of the magic. We are going to explore how models like ChatGPT work from the absolute bottom up. And don't worry, we're going to make the complex science totally accessible. So here is our syllabus for today's explainer. 1. Breaking down the text. 2. Mapping the meaning. 3. The transformer engine. And 4. The GPT family evolution. Let's get into it. Starting off with section 1, breaking down the text through byte pair encoding, or BPE. So the very first thing to realize here is that AI, it doesn't read words like we do. Actually, it has to chop human language up into tiny pieces first. Think of this algorithm kind of like snapping puzzle pieces together to build a vocabulary. Here's how it works. Step 1, the AI splits all the text in its massive training data into base characters, basically individual letters or bytes. Step 2, it scans all that data to find the most frequent consecutive pair of characters. And then, step 3, it merges that pair into a brand new sub-word token. It just rinses and repeats this process over and over and over until it builds a complete dictionary of tokens. Let me give you a really cool example from Hugging Face. Imagine the AI encounters the letters H, U, and G. Over time, as it's analyzing massive amounts of text, it notices that U and G appear together really often, so it learns a merge rule to combine them into UG. Then it sees that H and UG frequently sit right next to each other. It merges those, finally creating the single token HUG. By learning to group common letters like this, the AI efficiently builds up a vocabulary of common subwords and words, and that significantly reduces the chances of it running into some weird unknown token later on. All right, section 2, mapping the meaning. This is where we move from just letters to actual logic. So, once the AI has all those puzzle piece tokens, it needs to somehow understand their relationships and context, right? This is where LLM embeddings come in. They are absolutely crucial. Embeddings are basically numerical representations of tokens in a high-dimensional space that cluster similar meanings closer together. I know, high-dimensional space sounds like a total mouthful, but just imagine plotting concepts on this giant, invisible 3D map. On this map, related ideas live in the exact same neighborhood, so the token for dog is mapped very close to the token for puppy, but it's plotted very far away from the token for car. By converting words into these numerical vectors, the AI can mathematically compare meanings and really understand context. And the crazy thing is, we can take this map even further. On the left, you'll see unimodal embeddings. These represent a single data type, focusing solely on linguistic patterns, so just text. But on the right, we have multimodal embeddings. And this is where things get completely wild. Multimodal embeddings integrate multiple data types, like text, images, and audio, into the exact same shared space. A really great example of this is OpenAI's CLIP model, which actually aligns text and image embeddings. This is exactly what allows an AI to look at an image of a dog and connect it perfectly with the text word, dog. It literally bridges the gap between totally different types of media. Moving right along to part 3, the transformer engine. This was the massive 2017 Google breakthrough. Now, to understand why Google's attention is all you need paper was such a huge turning point, we really have to look at what came before it. Prior to 2017, the gold standard was recurrent neural networks, or RNNs. The big problem with RNNs, though, is that they read text sequentially, token by token, from start to finish. If the text was really long, they hit a massive computational bottleneck. They were incredibly slow to train because you literally couldn't process the next word until you finished the previous one. But the transformer architecture on the right, it completely changed the game. Transformers process all tokens in parallel at the exact same time using GPUs. They read everything all at once, making them insanely fast and highly scalable. Okay, so looking at the actual transformer architecture from that 2017 paper, I know, it looks complicated, but do not panic at this diagram. You can bypass most of the rooting here and just focus right on that purple box near the bottom, masked multi-self-attention. That box is essentially the system's grammar brain. It is the engine that actually figures out how words relate to each other in a sentence. Let's break down exactly what that self-attention mechanism is actually doing. Essentially, it generates three matrices for the text: a query, a key, and a value. Using these, it calculates the mathematical relationship and the weight of every single word in a sentence against every other word in that same sentence. It determines how words influence each other based on the context. Like, is the word bank referring to a riverbank or a financial bank? Self-attention figures that out by looking at all the surrounding words. And it uses multi-head attention to do this from multiple different perspectives simultaneously, which builds this deeply rich understanding of the text. But wait a second, if transformers read all the words at the exact same time in parallel, how do they know what order the words were originally in, right? The answer is this absolute genius trick called positional encoding. The architecture actually relies on sine and cosine wave functions to mathematically stamp every single word with its original position in the sequence. So it basically tags the token so the model knows, okay, this word came first and this word came fifth, even though it digested the whole sentence in the exact same millisecond. Which brings us to our final section: the GPT family evolution and the explosive power of scaling. So we have the tokens, we've got the embeddings, and we have this incredibly fast parallel processing engine. What happens when you push that to the limit? Well, in 2018, OpenAI released GPT-1. It was a basic decoder-only transformer, and it was trained to just simply predict the next token. But then, in 2019, they built GPT-2. It was based on the exact same recipe, but they made the model 10 times larger and fed it 10 times more data. By 2020, they released GPT-3 with a massive, massive jump in size. And by 2023, we got GPT-4, where the architecture details were kept tightly under wraps. But the underlying secret here? The architecture really didn't need to change much. Just simply increasing the size of the model improved its performance across all tasks. And because they just scaled up the model, they experienced this huge shock of what we call emergent capabilities. The AI could suddenly translate languages and answer highly complex questions, problems it was never, ever explicitly trained to solve. It was so unexpectedly powerful that OpenAI actually withheld the full release initially. They explicitly stated they had concerns about it being used to generate deceptive or abusive language at scale. It was this really profound moment that proved scale alone unlocked entirely new behaviors. Which brings us to this massive, mind-boggling number: 175 billion. That was the parameter count for GPT-3 back in 2020. Researchers basically realized that performance depended very weakly on complicated architectural tweaks. The optimal path forward was crystal clear. If you have a larger computing budget, just spend it on bigger models and way more data. Throwing sheer computational force at the transformer architecture fundamentally works. 175 billion parameters proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt. And that brilliantly illustrates exactly where we find ourselves today, which leaves us with a pretty massive question to end this explainer. If all of this magic, the nuanced text generation, the deep reasoning, the incredible coding ability, if all of this was unlocked by simply taking the transformer architecture and feeding it more data and more computing power, what happens when we scale up again? Really, where is the ceiling for this bottom-up AI architecture? Is there one? It's definitely something to think about the next time you type a prompt into that chat window. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive today, and keep asking questions.